Welcome back to the Messianic Hour. We're glad that you're with us today as we are talking about Passover to get you ready for this season, get you ready for celebrating Passover that comes in about 2 to 3 weeks. It'll be here before we know it. But an integral part of Passover is telling the story of Passover.
Right.
And to do that, as you've been talking about, you have a Passover Haggadah.
Right.
And it's just a book that walks you through telling the story.
Now, what's interesting is at the time of Yeshua, they did not have one of these. It was all done by oral tradition. But here's what's really neat. Ask your Jewish friends where the best example of how to celebrate Passover is in the Bible. And they're not going to be able to give you an answer. And then you can tell them the renewed covenant. We see Yeshua celebrating Passover, and when it talks about the Passover, we see all the different traditions and rituals that God required us to do, all mentioned in the renewed covenant. So a great way to be a witness to your friend, but you can get the Messianic Haggadah and be all said as well.
And Haggadah actually means telling.
Or order of service.
Or order of service. And along with the Haggadah, you have a Seder plate. And on the Seder plate, you've got items, and again, this is probably the one holiday where the show and tell is the most.
Right.
It's very, very show and tell, and it's multisensory because you're seeing it, you're smelling it, you're tasting it. And it's a great way, especially to teach your kids as you go through it.
Very family oriented.
Exactly. And you have on the Seder plate, you have the shank bone, which is symbolic of that sacrificial lamb offering. You have horseradish, which again depends.
The bitter herbs, bitterness of slavery,
and how strong you want it is, like you like to say, is how many tears you want to shed. You're going to have horosis, which is an apple, walnut, honey mixture. Again, kind of the sweetness of for us as a believer, the sweetness of release from sin through Messiah, but also represents, because it turns brown, the mortar of the
temple. And this was added by the rabbis, by the way. The first two that you mentioned, the roasted shank bone and the bitter herbs, those are two of the three things that God told us to do, and then others were added by the rabbis. Go on.
Then you have your karpas, which can be parsley. In our house, we always use parsley.
Or lettuce.
It could be a romaine lettuce. It could be celery. And that symbolizes springtime.
Also added by the rabbis.
And then you have your roasted egg,
which represents the second offering that was given up at the temple. It's roasted because it was, again, put up on the altar as used for the sacrifice. And again, that is added by the rabbis to remind us of the third of the temple. And then the last element that we have next to the plate is the matzah, or the unleavened bread. So God commanded us three things to do when we celebrate Passover: unleavened bread, bitter herbs, Passover lamb. With the destruction of the temple in 70 A.D., we can no longer sacrifice, so the lamb has been substituted for a chicken or a brisket.
And it's also very interesting that there's a rabbinical aspect of this too, and that's the 4 cups of wine,
which was also added by the rabbis, and they're done in a specific time period as well. So we see here that it's a time-sensitive issue. But also, Judy, before we go to there, I wanted one thing we had to mention. We said Passover only lasts for one day. And that day of Passover is a special Shabbat. It's called a Sabbath Gadol, or a high Sabbath, that could happen on any day of the week. And for that reason, this is very important. And we're going to talk about this next week. We're going to look at, is Good Friday really Good Friday? Did that really happen? Is that when he was put up on the altar? We're going to talk about more next week. But we're going to see here what takes place, so that we have to start it off with a special Sabbath rest. Then, as you said, 4 glasses of wine are drunk during the meal. And what's interesting, the first cup is a cup of sanctification. The second glass of wine that's drunk during the meal is the cup representing the plagues, or reminding us of the 10 plagues. The third cup I'm going to come back to, and then the fourth cup is a cup of Hallel, or cup of praise. The third cup is a cup of redemption, or we could say salvation. Now, it's interesting when you're reading the story of Passover, and this is something that you have to, when you're reading the story of the Last Supper, why do they give so much detail of times and dates and things that happen? And this is one of the reasons. we know that he picked up one of these 4 glasses and said, take, this is my blood. Now, we don't actually think it's his actual blood because then we become cannibals, and also drinking of blood is against Jewish tradition. So it's not really his blood. It's only a symbolic image of it. But he says, take, this is my blood. Do this in remembrance of me. Now, if he picked up the second cup, the cup of the plagues, would that make sense? No. Which cup does he pick up? He picks up the third cup, the cup of redemption or salvation. Now it makes sense. Take, this is my redemption. This is my salvation. Do this in remembrance of me. How do we know he picked up the third cup? Because it says after the meal was eaten. And that's when we know that the third cup of wine is drunk after the meal is eaten.
And part of the meal is you've got symbolic foods.
Right.
You'll have gefilte fish.
I love it. If you want to know, everyone out who thinks I might be Jewish, I could be Jewish, I want to be Jewish, you don't have to spend hundreds of dollars on taking the DNA test. Here's very simple. Go to your local grocery store. Go to the ethnic section and find gefilte fish. How do you know it's gefilte fish? It'll be in a big clear jar. You'll see this clear jelly, and it'll be these white blocks that look like
something
like you mash things together.
It's a bunch of white fish mixed together
into a little patty. Take one of those out, smell it, enjoy the aroma, bite into it. If you like it, guaranteed you're Jewish, because I've never met a Gentile who likes it.
I don't eat it.
None of my sister-in-laws, all Gentile. None of them eat it.
Now Natalie eats it. Our daughter eats it.
But she's Jewish.
Yes, she is.
She
gets it from
you. She's got that half. If you're half Jewish or whole Jewish or quarter Jewish, you'll eat it. But if you're not, you're fine. So save the money. Eat the gefilte fish. But you also forgot to save the money on the test.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You weren't listening close enough. But one thing we did forget was we're having fun today. The washing of the hands.
Yes.
Which is another symbol that we do. Again, it's that cleansing. It's what we see during the mikveh. It's a water cleansing, a water purification. So we also see during this time of cleansing and cleaning of it. Again, it's that outward and that inward spiritual as well.
And the one thing that makes the Seder very fun is that it's the one time where you really want the children to interrupt. You want them to ask questions, because it says in scriptures that you are to tell your children.
Right.
So you want to, it's as if you were there. It's as if you were experiencing it. So you want them to ask questions. You want them to understand. This is the one time you want your Seder to go a long time and have a long night.
But there's stuff to do for the kids to do. They have special readings that they have to do. Of course, they look for the matzah as well. Judy, one thing I want people to realize with our Haggadah, a lot of this is explained so that they don't have to try to figure it out. Plus, you've done a video, a teaching on it last week. They can watch online. I'm doing one for over the next 2 weeks at our congregation, Saturday 10 a.m. You can watch it. You can if you're listening to this Saturday afternoon or Sunday, you can go to our website. It's archived there. Check that out and understand it. But this is what's important. We're going to go through it more next week as well, because this celebrating the Passover is very important. One of the things the kids do is they ask the 4 questions. It was one of my favorite things. I did it almost all my life until I started having nephews. I was being the youngest. But here are the questions, just to give you an idea. Why is this night different from all other nights of the year? On all other nights, we eat either leavened bread or matzah, but on this night, we eat only matzah. On all other nights, we eat all kinds of vegetables, but on this night, we eat only morah. On all other nights, we do not dip our vegetables even once, but on this night, we dip twice. And on all other nights, we eat our meals either sitting or reclining, but on this night, we eat reclining. And Judy, what we're going to learn next week is that last question was changed after the year 70 AD. They had to have this question. Next week, I'm going to give you the question how it used to read, and we're going to answer this with this. I want to encourage you to go to our website, rabbiscott.com. You can order our Messianic Haggadah right there online. Check it out at our Messianic Marketplace, and go ahead and order. Remember, we are a listener-supported show. If you want to make a donation, during the Passover season, it's appropriate to give that special offering, so you can do that as well. We appreciate it while you're at there. If you're not on our mailing list, go sign up. You get a free book, I Have a Friend Who's Jewish to You, and the prophecy card, free for just signing up. Until next week, this is Rabbi Scott
and Judy
saying shalom and pray for the peace of Jerusalem.